Good day, everyone. So, this is Mrs. Villanueva, your teacher in Readings in Philippine History again for the next chapter of our lesson. So, pardon if my voice is having problems kasi medyo masakit po ang lalamunan ko. So, I have this lesson recorded, pre-recorded so that hindi po tayo mahirapan mamaya sa signal in the school. So, previously, our lesson was about internal and external criticisms. So, doon po ay naituro sa inyo on how to, actually basic reading comprehension po yun. Pinaka basic po ng dapat natin natututunan as college students. Now, during your external and internal evaluation ng isang historical event or data, ay pinagtutulong-tulungan niyo ito ng inyong grupo. Each of you contributed to the understanding of the events or the occurrence or the speech, 'di ba? So iba-iba po ang ininterpret ng bawat grupo. Now, using your internal and external criticisms, which we will also touch during the lesson for today. Now, sources of history, we have primary and secondary sources, which was part of your Philippine history, by the way, during your grade 7 lessons. Kasi nakapagturo din po ako ng high school, and I know for a fact that it is discussed also in your Araling Panlipunan, primary and secondary sources. Since you're already in college, you will be adding another concept here, which is your tertiary uh, source of information. For before that, we would like to introduce the topic with this quote by Marcus Cicero. To be ignorant of what occurred before you were born, is to remain always a child. So, sinasabi dito, kapag ikaw ay walang alam sa mga nangyari before ikaw ay pinanganak, parang hindi ka magkakaroon ng personal growth. So, if you always remain a child, you will be fed all the information. Tulad po ng iba, naghihintay lang ng spoon feeding for the information that they need. Kailangan po, nagkakaroon din tayo ng, ng sariling kusa sa pagtuklas, sa pag-research, sa kalkal ng information, and that would be your job as a historian. Sabihin niyo, ma'am, ayaw naman namin maging historian kasi boring naman maging historian. But sa mga but you don't know that you are using history all over again every day of your life. In what way? Habang kinakalkal mo kung ano yung nangyari kahapon, before you were born, kinakalkal mo yung cellphone ng information ng iyong boyfriend or yung ng iyong asawa. That's another way of using history in your daily life. Yung pagbabayad mo ng tax is one way also. Paano nagkaroon ng tax na ganito kalaki? So these are all documents or historical data na nakaka-touch po sa personal na buhay ninyo. And it was there even before you were born. 'Di ba yung apelyido mo, example din 'yan. So paano naging apelyido ng tatay mo 'yan, ng lolo mo at ng kanununuan mo? And why do you carry it? So it's like that simple historical data na kailangan mong alamin, 'di ba? Alamin mo ang background ng pamilya mo, alamin mo ang background ng taong kakasamahin mo sa buong buhay mo, 'di ba? Ganun lang 'yon. So you don't remain a child if you are doing research, you are asking questions, you are opening your mind to uh, information even before you were born. So our primary objective for this learning is to evaluate primary sources and their credibility, authenticity, and provenance. So ito lang nag-iisa ha, isa lang yung ating learning outcome. Pero kung tutuusin ay napakalawak po ng kanyang kasasakupan. And that would include the chapter outline, which is the distinction between primary, secondary, and tertiary sources. So, primary, secondary, and tertiary sources ay kaakibat din po ng external and internal criticism ninyo na ginawa ninyo to determine the principles for determining Reliability. When you say reliability, it's like kung gaano siya ka-reliable yung source nyo, kung hindi lang ba yung marites sa kapitbahay ninyo, ang pinanggalingan ng information. It should be general principles for determining reliability. And when you say reliability, you mean things or information that could be proven true and true as well as with facts or factual. Now, categories of historical sources. So, dito tayo sa sa categories ng historical sources. So, we have documents, okay? So, most historical source materials can be grouped into basic categories. So, ang ating documents na hahawakan po for the historical data could be in the form of documents, numerical records, oral statements, relics. Yan po mga importanteng apat na yan na categories. So ulitin ko yun for you taking down notes. Historical source materials. Okay? These are the historical source materials I group into 4 basic categories, namely documents, numerical records, 3 oral statements, and 4 relics. So let's talk about documents first. Documents are written or printed materials that have been produced in one form or another, sometimes in the past. So these are produced in one form or another. And how are documents produced? They are either written or printed. So sa sulat ni Jose Rizal, it's written. Ang kanyang book na No Limitangere and El Filibusterismo are both printed. So these are documents as well. Your birth certificate is a printed material. Okay? Mamaya na tayo sa iba pang example. Basta when you say documents, it's written or printed material. Numerical records include any time of numerical data in printed or handwritten form. So numbers naman po ito. Okay? So, these are numbers involving. Ang documents naman ay written or printed materials na, syempre, words. Numerical records refer to numbers or numerical data. Oral statements, this could be in any form na pagsalita or made orally by someone. And how do you record that? It's like a voice recorder. Your cell phone can record also your voice. 'Di ba, an interview or a speech over the radio, it's an oral statement kasi wala kang hinahawakang papel. Then relics, these are any objects whose physical or visual characteristics can provide some information about the past. Okay, your dinosaur relic in the museum, the skull ng unang-unang ng mga Neanderthal man or ng Homo sapiens. These are examples of relics. Now, let's go to the distinction of primary, secondary, and tertiary sources. So, ano nga ba ulit yung apat na yon? Documents. 4 sources of historical data are documents, numerical records, oral statements, and relics. So, the most emphasis in historical research is on the interpretation of documents, diaries, and the like. So, historical data are categorized into primary, secondary, and tertiary sources. Pero mas binibigyan pong importansya palagi ang primary and secondary. Why? Because a primary source is one prepared by an individual who was actually participating in the event or was a direct witness to what is being described. So, primary sources include first-hand information such as eyewitness, repost, and original documents. Marami po nangyayari nito, di ba? Eyewitness, repost. Like, kapag may nakikita kang banggaan. So, nowadays, it's so easy. All you have to do is tutok your cellphone dun sa nangyayari sa event, and then it will be online in a few seconds. So, primary sources. You are an eyewitness and ikaw din mismo ang kumuha ng first-hand information. Secondary, first-hand original and unfiltered information. Primary, examples po ng primary sources are eyewitness accounts, personal journals, interviews, survey, experiments, historical documents, and artifacts. So these sources have a close direct connection to their object or their subjects. So sources nito ng primary sources ay malapit ka, nandyan ka, may direct connection ka. So, advantages and disadvantages of primary sources. Ano po ba yung kanilang pinaka-advantage and disadvantage? Sa advantages po, it directly address your topic and often provide information that is unavailable elsewhere. So, ito ay direkta niyang maibibigay ang topic. Ma-address mo agad kung ano yung gusto mong ibigay or share na information. For example, the questions you compose for an interview or yung survey that you will likely to target your unique interest of the topic. For example, pagdating ng thesis writing ninyo in your 4th year, 3rd year pa lang hihinga na kayo ng topic eh. And then, all you have to do is create a questionnaire, a survey that will target the information na kailangan mo from your particular primary sources. So, yung hypothesis, yung iyong pinag-aaralan o theory, ang yung hypothesis ng thesis mo ay mapoprove mo ngayon from the accumulation of all the primary sources through interview surveys na nakinuha mo, and then your interpretation of the primary sources, mabibigyan mo ng sagot ang sarili mong tanong. So, as eyewitness to the accounts, ito ang pinaka-disadvantage niya. As eyewitness to the account, maaaring malapit kang masyado sa subjects na iyong pinag-aaralan. Subject, when I say subject, not RPH, but the subjects are the people involved or the event or the personal matters na nandun po, na parang ang sinasabi dito bilang eyewitness. Halimbawa, may accident sa road. So dahil napakalapit mo dun sa aksidente, ikaw mismo na nagre-record, ay masyado kang malapit sa aksidente, hindi mo nataranta ka, and you don't see the bigger picture. Kasi doon ka lang sa isang point of view nasa isang angulo ka lang. For example, nakita mo yung event, naranasan mo yung accident mismo, nandun ka sa loob ng jeep ng isa sa mga na-involved doon. So, nandun yung nangangatog ka, kinakabahan ka, and syempre, you will blame, maghahanap ka ng di ba? Ay, bakit tayo nasagasaan? Baka ito kasi driver natin masyado malakas, mabilis. Oh, hindi, yung isa yun eh. So there would be a lack of critical distancing of your mindset. You won't be able to think objectively. Magiging subjective ka. Yun ang nagiging disadvantage of being a primary source. Now, let's go to secondary source. Secondary source are one step removed from the topic. Kumbaga parang, ito naman siya, makikita niya na yung POV or point of view of other people. For example, as a secondary source, ikaw na newscaster dun sa isang accident na to, you will become the secondary source. Bakit? Wala ka naman dun sa pangyarihan eh. Pagdating mo dun, nagtanong ka lang sa mga involved sa accidents. So, itong si jeepney letter A at si jeepney letter B nagbanggaan, and then the witnesses from jeepney A says it's the fault of jeepney B, when the what do you call this one? The people also from jeepney B are blaming the driver from jeepney A. So these are all examples ng na ikaw na reporter, you will get the point of view of both jeepney passengers, at dun ka then you also ask the point of view of the policemen who first attended to the incident, and also the traffic enforcer na maaring nandun na rin sa So you get all the bigger picture as a secondary source. Although you are one step removed from the topic, kumbaga kinuha mo ng information sa kanila, then it would be involving all the perspectives of those involved. Okay, you must remember that secondary information is filtered through someone else's perspective and may be biased. 'Di ba? So bias sila sa primary, yung mga primary sources mo bias. Si jeepney A and jeepney B might be biased. Pero makikita mo po pag na-filter mo yung mga information na to, yung mga secondary information na to, maaari mo makita ang bigger picture. Okay? So advantages and disadvantages, it provides a variety of expert perspectives and insights. So hindi lamang sa mga pasahero na perspective, you ask the perspective of the policeman, of the traffic enforcer, and dun mo makukuha yung tunay na nangyari. So peer review usually ensures the quality of sources such as scholarly articles. Ano po yung peer review? Ito yung gumawa ka ng isang, ayan, yung thesis writing ninyo. Kasi yan talaga magiging ending po ng inyong, bago kayo graduate ng MPC, yan po ang inyo talagang requirement, basic requirement. So, peer review usually ensures na ang inyong ginawang mga questionnaire, ang inyong kinuha ng mga information, ang inyong mga related literature will usually ensure the quality of the sources of information that you receive para po ilagay sa inyong research. Researching secondary sources is more efficient than planning, conducting, and analyzing certain primary sources. Like what I've said, mas efficient kung minsan kunin ang perspektibo na lang ng secondary source. Kasi sila yung meron nang nakapag-analyze ng mga primary sources. So, in contrast naman, kapag ang secondary sources are not necessarily focused on your specific topic, you may have to dig to find applicable information. So, yun ang disadvantage niya. Kasi kapag hindi naman siya focus, kasi ang primary source, doon ka na nakafocus sa isang topic, di ba? And yun lang ang pag-uusapan. Pero with secondary sources, you get a perspective of different point of views. So, kita nyo ba kung minsan sa Wikipedia, when you click on a certain meaning, meron pa naka-highlight na naman na blue na pwede mo naman i-click. So, you have to dig to find applicable information. Kapag merong kumbaga may references pa sa baba, sige pa, search nyo na naman yung susunod na references. So, information may be colored by the writer's own bias and faulty approach. Yun nga lang. So, ito naman si writer, di ba? Maaaring pumanig din si secondary source na to. Maaaring si reporter, halimbawa balik tayo dun sa accident, si reporter ay papanig sa jeepney A or sa jeepney B. So, magiging bias or magiging faulty din yung approach na secondary source. Now, let's move to tertiary sources. Tertiary sources provide third-hand information by reporting ideas and details from secondary sources. So, si primary source, nire-report ni secondary source. Si secondary source, nire-report ni tertiary source. So, this does not mean that tertiary sources have no value. They are merely that they include the potential for another layer of bias. Medyo may potential lang siya kasi na, ito na naman, lalo na yung mga opinions, ay lumalabas po usually, and then another layer of opinion will be integrated into your report. So, nangyayari ay, imbis na si secondary source lang, sa ano lang yan sa if the information is not used properly. Si secondary source, nagdagdag na ng opinion. Then, on the tertiary source, nagdagdag pa uli. So, it would be another layer na naman ng kanyang sariling additional information of bias. Pag sinabi mong bias, you take one side, okay, of the information or the situation. Advantages and disadvantages of tertiary source. It offers a quick and easy introduction to your topic. In what way? Saglit Let's see. Additional information natin regarding tertiary source. Yan. Okay, they point out high quality primary and secondary sources. So, madali mo siyang maibigay yung primary and secondary sources as a tertiary source. Marami kang mapo-point out na mga information and that would be easier for your research. Tulad po sa inyong related literature and related studies, what you have to do is to pick up the 10 related literature and 10 related studies. And all you have are 20 information. So, hanapin mo yan. As a tertiary source, it's a good thing na meron kang access to primary and secondary sources, which you will be using directly sa iyong topic. It would be quick and easy to introduce your topic using the sources already available. So, may oversimplify or otherwise distort a topic, and by rehashing secondary sources, you may miss new insights into a topic. So, ang disadvantage nito is that whenever you use the sources or in opinion and the opinion of others on the secondary source, parang nami-miss mo na naman yung iba ni bagong insight. Or, in an advantageous way naman, makaka-form ka rin ng sarili mong insight into this topic. So, kumbaga, medyo sa pinaka-reliable talaga na source is number 1 is the primary. Secondary is already one layer away from the truth or meron ng sariling halo na information or opinion, and the tertiary lalo ay mas pangatlo pa. So, yung opinion ng secondary is clouded already, mas clouded pa ulit. Pero, that's in a disadvantageous way. Pero kung isipin mo naman sa advantage, if the person is intelligent in analyzing the facts that he or she is handling, mas madadagdagan po ang insight, you being the tertiary source of information. So, types of primary sources. Dito po tayo sa types of primary sources. So, types of primary sources includes autobiographies and memoirs. Okay, hindi ito memoirs ha. It's a memoir. It's a French word. So, it means memories. So, an autobiography is an account of a person's life written by that person himself or herself. Pag sinabi mong auto, it's your own. Okay? Autobiographies. Bio means life. Graphies is your recording. Okay? So, autobiography, your personal life. So, a memoir is a history or record composed from personal observation and experience. Okay? So, ito ay personal experiences. Diba na ano na nga natin ito na meron tayo nitong napanood sa TV. I mean, a movie, The Memoir of a Hollow Man. Something ganun. So, meron din po usually nagiging title din to ng mga pocketbook tong memoir na to eh. Okay? So, it's a historical record composed from personal observation and experience. Okay. Iba naman po yung diary. Ang memoir naman kasi, sila yan ang journal. It's like, medyo memories lang ng event. Pero ang diary it includes personal reflections, di ba? So, nandun personal feelings mo, nandun pumapasok sa diaries. So, a personal letter is a type of letter that usually concerns personal matters sent from one individual to another. Personal letter involves love letters, correspondences, friendly letters. So, yun po, mga personal letters. A correspondence is a body of letters or communications. So, tatlo yan diaries, personal letters, and correspondences. Correspondences will include memo, letter of request, letter of permission, di ba yan? Correspondences. So, interview, surveys, and fieldwork. An interview is a primary source pa rin ito Examples pa rin ng primary source are interview, surveys, and fieldwork. So, an interview is a conversation where questions are asked and answers are given. A survey naman is a list of questions aimed at extracting specific data from a particular group of people. O, yan, survey Fieldwork at survey, magkasama po yan. Kasi ang survey, ito po yung list of questions ninyo na ibibigay sa pagkuha nyo ng inyong information regarding your study in your thesis writing. So, a field research or field work is the collection of information outside the laboratory, library, or workplace setting. So, when you say field work, halimbawa, yung iyong thesis ay planting ganito, nag-experiment kayo tulad ng ginawa ng auntie ko. She was planting peanuts, mani, using different kinds of fertilizers na natural na fertilizers. So, sa fieldwork niya, involved ng paglinis namin ng plot, pagtatanim, pag-o-observe, pagdidilig araw-araw. Those are field works or field research. Photographs and posters are also examples of primary sources, and they can illustrate the past events as they happened and people as they were at a particular time. So, photographs and posters shows kung ano yung sa photographs, diba? It shows your baby picture, ano yung tsura mo ng bata ka, ano yung tsura ng nanay yung tatay mo ng bata pa sila. Posters can illustrate past events like events na tulad yan, mga pangyayari ng panahon ng yung sini, 'di ba? What happened, what, where, when, mga announcement na ganun. Posters, these are also examples like the drawings, 'di ba? So drawings that can be interpreted. Works of art and literature, example po ng primary source is the painting. So it's a form of visual art where paint is or ink is being used. Paintings. Sa drawing naman, a form of visual arts wherein a person uses various drawing instruments to mark paper or another two-dimensional medium. So, drawing, alam naman natin yan, di ba? Literature, a body of written works. So, I first became interested with history to take it up as a major for my bachelor degree because of literary works na involve ang written works na to. I became delighted with stories about kings and queens and princes and whatever. So, nung panahon ng England, okay, sa Europe, early in the early centuries ng civil tawag dito ng civilian world of Europe or particularly sa topic po about regarding King Henry. So King Henry was he had so many wives and parang doon po umikot yung interest ko, bakit ganyan siya. He was the father of Queen Elizabeth I. So doon ako na then he became an inspiration to all pocket books no during that time. Yung mga duke na nai-inlove sa mga duchess, yung duke na nai-inlove sa mahihirap. So, it was like, it's a body of written works which brought me back to the time na ganun yung pamumuhay ng olden times. So, kahit sa movies, di ba, nakikita natin yan. Kapag, kahit sa setting ng Game of Thrones, iba yung kanilang, although it's unrealistic, pero parang ganyan yung setup nila. Very realistic din, di ba? It brings us back to the time of the 18th century, 14th century, 12th century na life na hindi patulad sa buhay natin ngayon. Speeches and oral history is a form of communication that is in spoken language made by the speaker. So, tulad po na naging assignment nyo, the speech of Corazon Aquino. So, types of secondary sources. Types of secondary sources, bibliographies naman po. Bibliography is you writing a life of another person. So, bibliography is a source of information that would be organized list of sources in which is followed by a brief note or annotation. Oh, sorry. Bibliography is different. Okay, wait. Nagkamali yata ako dyan. Bibliography. Sorry, eto pala. Okay. So, bibliographies are annotated bibliography. It's an organized list of sources of information. Sorry. Okay. Napagkamalan kong biography ang bibliography. So, an example po ng Dr. Rizal's annotation to Antonio de Morga. So, it's like these annotations daw is one, these annotations do one or more. Okay. So annotations, these annotations, they describe kung ano po yung the within the book, kung ano yung i-discuss within the book. So that bibliography, it's just a short information kung ano po yung nalalaman ng isang research. Like for example, it it focuses on the book or article. It suggests the usefulness for your research and evaluate its methods. So, kumbaga may notes or annotation siya kung para saan yung libro. Next one is biographical works. Ito, biography is a description of real person's life, including factual details as well as stories from the person's life. Pag biography, ikaw ay nagsusulat tungkol sa buhay ng ibang tao. Autobiography is your own personal life, which is a primary source. Biography or a biography is a secondary source. Kasi ang primary source mo ng information ay yung ini-interview mo, pero ikaw yung nagsusulat ng buhay niya. Periodicals are the third secondary source. Example is periodicals. No, so these are newspapers, magazines, and scholarly journals, all of which are published periodically. When you say periodically, they have a schedule kung kailan po sila lalabas. Okay? So, newspaper is a periodical publication containing written information about current events, while magazines and journals may be published weekly, monthly, quarterly, annually, or at some other interval. So, depende po yan. Tulad po ng graduation, yan? Catalog ninyo, that's only annually. So, magazines and journals. Those literature reviews, literary reviews, and review articles such as movie reviews and book reviews. So, a literature review is an evaluation ng report or evaluative report of information found in the literature related to your selected area of study. So, literary review, ganyan din ang mangyayari sa inyo sa sa inyong literature review nyo, review of certain studies, certain articles sa inyo pong thesis writing. So, film review naman ay kinikriticize nyo yung film's overall quality and determine whether it's worth recommending or not. A book review is also a literary criticism. Ina-analyze nyo yung content, yung kanyang style, yung kanyang merit, and also if you would recommend the certain book. So, types of tertiary sources, dito na tayo sa pangatlo. General references such as dictionaries, encyclopedias, almanacs, and atlases. So, example po yan like your Guinness World Book of Records, your Webster, Merriam-Webster Diary, your Encyclopedia ABCDD. So, also, another is Wikipedia, your YouTube, message boards, and social media sites like Twitter and Facebook. Also, your search sites like Google Chrome, Fox, I don't know. Ano nga ba yung isang Fox na yan? FOX. And then, other sources. Your search sites. Okay? So, very common po ngayon nowadays ang inyong tertiary sources. Because right now, lahat po tayo ay almost involved in social media. In YouTube, we all use Wikipedia and social media sites like Twitter and Facebook. So, we also use Google Chrome, di ba? Masyado tayong dependent na nga actually sa Google Chrome, di ba? So, and other search sites. So, repositories of primary sources or kung saan sila nakalagay. A library is a collection of sources of information and similar resources made accessible to a defined community for reference or borrowing. So, lahat naman siguro tayo familiar with the library, right? All of you must have your library IDs right now. So, ang isang susunod pa pong source natin or repository na pwede natin pagtagwan ng information are your archives. It's an accumulation of historical record or physical place where they are located. Okay? So, they are historical records, kumbaga documents. It's called an archive naman. Sa museum naman, for those artifacts or fossils.
which are objects of artistic, cultural, historical, and scientific importance. Siguro naman alam nyo na yun, di ba? So, a historical society naman is an organization dedicated to preserving, collecting, researching, and interpreting historical information or items. So, you have your National Historical Association, you also have your Knights of Rizal. So, these are historical societies that I'm aware of in the Philippines. And it will be helpful kapag sa kanila nyo na nanghingi kayo ng information tulad ng pag-i-interpret ng historical items. Kasi yung historical items na kung minsan, no, di ba? So, lalapit ka sa NCAA, National Commission of Arts and something na yun. Kapag may nakita kang painting na unique, sabihin mo, saan po ba ito nanggaling? Baka ito'y matanda na or something like that. And then you submit it to a certain historical society. Historical societies also come to protect historical places. For example, gusto mo, yung bahay ninyo ay during Spanish period pa. Tulad po yung vegan, okay? Sa vegan na ginagawa ng National Historical Association or Society is that they protect the certain, even the government, no? They naglalaan po sila ng funds para po pag-ingatan ang itong mga historical sites na to. And that in that way, they are organizing in they are dedicated to preserving the 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 facade or yung itsura po mismo ng vegan during the Spanish times. So, in library science, special collections, meron din po part doon sa library science, are libraries or library units that house materials requiring specialized security and user services. So, kung minsan, naka-lock siya or nakatabi siya sa isang lugar na hindi natin basta-basta mahahawakan or magagalaw. So, document collection. Document collection is used in historical research and other research design in combination with other ways of data collection. So, ang mga found documents produced by organizations, they are called formal records, personnel, yan, tulad din bawa sa HR, okay? So, HR, andun yung iyong 201 file, sales record, shareholder reports, minutes of the meeting. So, informal information can also be sources of information, like your notes, memos, and emails. So, these are public records, are example also, electoral registers, registers of birth, marriages, and death. So, these are samples of saan na ba tayo? Speeches and history. Okay. Repositories tayo. Okay. So, dito po nakatago ang mga information. So, it includes public records. Okay, yung mga public records ninyo, makukuha nyo yan sa ninyo natatanggap, yung mga found documents na to. Na-produce by the organizations. So, you go to your civil registry in your own municipalities. Doon yung makukuha tong mga importanteng mga papeles na to, like your birth certificate, marriage certificate, death certificate, electoral registers, could be taken from COMELEC, di ba? Ganun. So, next one would be personal papers. Ito ay produced by individuals naman. Kapag ang mga information or sources of information na makukuha na natin ng primary sources, it would be personal papers, which will be your diaries, your logs, your letter, phone text, yan, kasama po yan in email. Ito ay produce mo. So, kapag di ba, when we send through GCash, usually ini-screenshot natin at sinisend yun. So, it's an example of a document na, naka-document na yung ating transaction, monetary transaction, and it comes from our phone, di ba, and sent na lang. So, documents, ito individuals pa rin ang nagbibigay ng primary sources. It's your shopping list, your bus, and train tickets, yan. Yung mga ticket mo na yan na nakapakalat-kalat sa bag mo, it's part of your primary source that you traveled at this specific time, di ba? Halimbawa, na late ka, ma'am, tingnan niyo po yung ticket ko, totoo po talagang traffic kasi I went, I took the bus 2 hours ago, ito po yung oras. So, it's a document that you are telling the truth. Diba? So, publications din, magiging repository din ng primary source. Mag-include nito yung academic literature, yung popular literature, guides, and manuals. Okay? So, academic literature, it could be your textbook. Popular literature could be magazines, di ba? Okay. Documents found from secondary source could be also part of your primary sources, repository ng inyong primary sources. And that would include sources of data from previous studies and field notes. So, secondary data would be also used na pwede mong kuhanan ng iyong primary sources. They are publicly funded surveys, internal organizational research. So, these are examples na pwede mo pong pagkuhanan din ng information. So, document collection pala to. Sorry. The document collection could be produced from organizations, from individuals, from publications, from secondary data, from multimedia, and researcher-generated documents. So, document collection, kasi ito yung pinaka ginagamit. So, document collections could be taken from, number 1, balikan natin ha, document collections could be found, yan, ito ang nalaktawan natin kanina. So, document collection is used in historical research and other research designs in combination with other ways of data collection. So, kailangan kasi usually papel talagang prueba natin, no? It could be produced by organizations, could be produced by individuals, it could be produced by publications, by secondary data, by multimedia. Yan. Sa multimedia, sa number 5, photos, videos, comics, strips, signposts, and models, sound and music. Diba? Minsan, pag narinig natin sina Matt Monroe, we know that the music came from the 70s. Pag narinig na naman natin sina Olivia Newton-John, we say it's from the 80s. Kapag narinig natin na 90s, Backstreet Boys during my high school days. Diba? Parang ganon. Multimedia could also depict the time of historical data. Okay. Next one is electronic sources. Okay, multimedia pa rin, kasama pa rin ang electronic sources. Screenshots, websites, online communities, and archives. Diba? So, multimedia, electronic sources, screenshots. Okay, pag sinabi nyo, attendance. So, your documentation could come from screenshots. Okay, researcher-generated documents include field notes, photographs, and diagrams. Also, storyboards and use case scenarios. Kumbaga, gumagamit ka ng scenarios po to defend your case. Okay. So, I think that's the end. And it's only 79 slides to, no? Pero it's a good thing that every information you need to take note about is already in the PowerPoint. Now, we prepared kasi magkakaroon po tayo ng quiz either at the end of the lecture time or in the next meeting. So, thank you so much for your time and have a good day. And I hope you have taken down notes para po sa inyong midterm and or final exam. So, thank you.